Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for July 1st, 2024. The question I'm going to take up today is, was the Trump-Biden debate really a wake-up call? And the quick answer is no, only unless you were asleep. The media gnashing of teeth over the pathetic performance by Joe Biden is not so much about Biden as it is about the media and the political class, which thought they could fool the American people into thinking that Joe Biden was a viable candidate. But it raises a deeper question, which is, who's actually running the country? Now, it shouldn't have been unexpected that Biden would melt down. How often have we seen him wandering off physically or mentally, where he has to be steered back to the podium, or where he turns around after giving a speech to shake hands with a ghost that doesn't exist? Or how often does he stare blankly into the camera when he doesn't get the question and end up mumbling an answer that they later have to explain what he really meant to say? So all of that has gone on. This wasn't the first time we saw it with the debate. But the issue is not, should he run? The issue is, who's running the country? And why should he still be president, given his obvious incapacity? And we're in the middle of wars, growing indebtedness in the country, a green policy which is destroying industry. And the question then is, who benefits from this? And so we're going to be doing an investigation, a quick investigation, an intelligence reading, to look at the question of who's running the country and toward what end. Now, among the key people we're going to be looking at are, among the Biden advisors, one is Tom Donilon, who is a key figure who goes back to the Clinton administration. He was in the State Department during the Clinton period, then served under Obama. Donilon is now a key advisor to Joe Biden. He's also, by the way, with BlackRock Investment Institute, and he is a leading representative of the military-industrial financial complex. But he's one of several. We'll be taking a look at this and looking at much more. I should also add, as I'm talking about the pathetic display by Biden, that there wasn't that much shown by Trump either. The fact that he was more alert, stayed awake, well, that's somewhat useful. But when it came to policy questions, he had nothing to say of substance about how to end the wars, how to move out of the economic collapse. And that's the problem the country faces, and that's why the American people have to take charge. Now, let me just add, it's not just the United States, it's the systemic collapse. We see NATO losing the Ukraine war, and yet escalating, demanding more money be spent, more lives lost. For what? A policy of weakening Russia. Why? Because Russia, with the BRICS, working with China, represents an alternative to a collapsing unipolar system. The idea is not just multipolarity, it's what does multipolarity stand for? Relations among sovereign nations that are acting in cooperation with each other for the benefit of their citizens. Most of the governments of the West now are not doing that. They're acting for the benefit of the corporate cartels that run the governments. So the question is not, is government bad? It's who's running the government. And again, that's the question we have to look at on the question of who's running the Biden administration. But besides the NATO losing the Ukraine war and pushing for more provocations, we have the wipeout of Macron yesterday. The first round of the French snap elections, Macron's party got about 21%, finishing far behind Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party and then the Unified Left. It's likely Macron will just have a handful of members of the assembly which means he'll be the lamest of lame ducks for the next couple of years. You have this week the elections in the United Kingdom, the likely collapse of the Tory party. But that doesn't mean that the Labour Party is going to be in a position to rule, because Starmer is very little different from the Tories. Starmer is a protege of Tony Blair. And the last thing we need is a new Blair administration in the United Kingdom. And then you also have the interesting case, the anomaly, of the freeing in the midst of this of Julian Assange. Why was he freed? There are a number of speculations going around, but I think one of the key things to look at there is that the prospect of a trial of Assange in the United States during an election campaign, had he been extradited, would have been so embarrassing, not just to the political class that had him jailed, but to the media, which refused to speak out to defend the freedom of the press. You have all these people talking about American democracy and our great freedom, saying nothing about locking up the one journalist whose publications documented the corruption and war crimes of the American government. And so the fact that that was covered up for so long might become an issue were it to come out. So I'm going to be attaching the article that I just wrote on this about the importance of an innocent man being forced to plead guilty while the real war criminals he exposed are still running around. Now, we also will be including a link for the resolution that was passed at the International Peace Coalition meeting last week, which was based on the peace proposal from Vladimir Putin, which is basically, let's negotiate for mutual security. Putin put this forward from 2018 up until the beginning of the special military operation in 2022. His intention was to show that Russia had legitimate security concerns, which included not having NATO on the border. Now, as Assange showed by one of the documents he leaked, Bill Burns' memo, "Niet means Niet" in 2008, which basically said Russia will not tolerate Ukraine in NATO. But that was already known. That was known in the 1993-94 period when Bill Clinton was taking up the whole question of NATO expansion. And his advisors, including General Saakashvili, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said that Ukraine going into NATO is unacceptable to Russia. So from 1993 to 2022, consistently, there were Americans speaking out against putting Ukraine in NATO because of the threat to Russia. And yet, this is still being pushed today by Blinken and the Biden administration. So you have to understand that this is the breakdown of this unipolar order. They're losing it. They can't control it. They have no alternatives. And so the idea of actually negotiating with Putin, and by the way, if you saw Biden at the debate with Trump, you can see why they don't want him talking to Putin. So it's up to us. We have to fight for solutions, and solutions based on ideas of how the American system functions. And this is what we're seeing now coming about with the activity of the BRICS, the Russians, the Chinese, and others, the trade policies, the move away from the blackmail of the weaponization of the dollar. We're on the verge of a new era. And that's why when you look at Joe Biden last Thursday night, you realize not only should he not be running for president, he shouldn't be remaining in the office as president. Because to have someone with that kind of mental problem, with his finger on the button, pushing a provocation against Russia, that's a threat to all of us. So look at what I have posted in the description section on the links, circulate them, and join us. Don't just sit there and say there's nothing you can do. The world is changing dramatically, and your input is needed.